Welcome back to RPG PhD, where we explore the deeper mechanics and storytelling techniques behind tabletop role-playing games. I'm Dr. Ben, and today we're taking an in-depth look at branching narratives and the different ways you can use them to build compelling stories in your campaigns. From classic hub and spoke models to more complex structures like the web of Intrigue, reactive worlds, and even looping narratives, we're going to cover a wide range of approaches that give your players the power to shape their own adventure. Let's dive into how these techniques can elevate your storytelling and bring your games to life. Branching narratives are one of the most powerful storytelling techniques in tabletop role-playing games, offering players the ability to shape the story based on their choices. This approach mirrors the complexity of real-life decision-making, with every action causing ripple effects that lead to diverse outcomes. Unlike linear storytelling, where a single narrative thread is followed, branching narratives empower players to feel that their choices matter, enhancing immersion and personal investment. To fully appreciate the use of branching narratives in tabletop role-playing games, it's essential to explore the techniques that make this approach effective, the potential pitfalls, and how it can be utilized to create memorable and dynamic game experiences. At its core, a branching narrative is a system where player choices lead to multiple potential outcomes, creating a network of possibilities. However, this structure can vary significantly in scope. Some branches may lead to drastically different storylines, while others may change smaller, more personal elements within the same overarching plot. The strength of a branching narrative lies in its ability to balance player agency with narrative coherence. A common technique for structuring a branching narrative in RPGs is the hub and spoke model. In this approach, players reach key decision points, hubs, that lead to different narrative branches, spokes, but eventually the plot reconverges at another hub. This allows for meaningful player choices without requiring the game master to endlessly prepare for every possible variation. For instance, imagine a campaign where players must choose whether to ally with a city-state or its neighboring rival. This choice affects not only immediate relationships with NPCs, but also the broader political landscape of the campaign. In the hub and spoke model, the outcome of this choice may eventually lead back to a central conflict that involves both factions, ensuring the narrative remains focused while still accounting for the consequences of the player's decision. The branching tree model is a classic structure often seen in choose-your-own-adventure books, and it works well in tabletop role-playing games for creating narratives with highly divergent outcomes. In this model, each decision a player makes leads to a new branch in the story, and those branches can continue to split into further choices, creating a tree-like structure. Unlike the hub and spoke model, where all paths lead back to key points, the branching tree structure allows for more radical divergence, with each branch potentially leading to a distinct outcome or conclusion. While this approach offers maximum player agency, it also requires extensive preparation, as the GM must account for multiple potential outcomes. It's best suited for shorter campaigns or individual sessions with a clear narrative goal, such as mysteries or one-shot adventures. In a murder mystery campaign, players might start by investigating a crime scene. From there, they can choose to follow one of several leads, each of which opens up new branches. Interviewing a witness, breaking into a suspect's home, or tracking a rumored accomplice. Each path might lead to different clues or suspects, creating multiple possible conclusions depending on the player's choices. In the parallel paths model, multiple storylines run concurrently, but the players can only interact with one or a few of them at any given time. These parallel paths may cross or influence each other at key points, but each path remains distinct. This technique allows for deep world building, as the actions the players take in one path can have consequences that reverberate in others, creating a dynamic and interconnected narrative. This model is particularly useful in open world campaigns where different factions, groups, or events are unfolding simultaneously. It emphasizes the idea that the world exists independently of the players and continues to evolve based on both player actions and external factors. In a political intrigue campaign, the players may choose to align themselves with one of several factions vying for control of a kingdom. Each faction's storyline progresses concurrently, and the player's actions, or inaction, in one path can influence the balance of power in the others. For instance, if the players choose to aid a rebel faction, the ruling government may respond by tightening control, leading to more restrictive laws that affect everyone in the campaign world. In the modular narrative technique, the GM builds the campaign in discrete, self-contained modules or segments. Each module is a mini-story with its own plot, characters, and conflicts, but they all fit together to form a larger, overarching narrative. Players can engage with the modules in any order or skip some entirely, with each module affecting the overall narrative to some degree. This technique offers flexibility and replayability, as different groups of players might experience the campaign in entirely different ways. It also allows the GM to adapt the story to the player's evolving interests, as modules can be added, dropped, or rearranged depending on how the campaign unfolds. In a post-apocalyptic role-playing game campaign, each module could represent a different faction or settlement in the wasteland, each with its own internal struggles and goals. Players might choose to help or hinder these groups, and their decisions will shape the ultimate fate of the wasteland. One group might become kingmakers, consolidating power in a single faction, while another might sow chaos by playing the factions against each other. The sandbox approach is a narrative structure where players are given a richly detailed world to explore with minimal overarching plot direction from the GM. Instead of guiding players through a predetermined narrative, the GM provides a dynamic setting full of potential storylines, characters, and conflicts, and the players choose which parts of the world they want to engage with. The world reacts to their choices in real time, with the story emerging organically based on their actions. In this approach, the narrative is entirely player-driven, which means the players have maximum freedom to shape the story. The GM might be highly adaptable, improvising based on player decisions while ensuring that the world feels cohesive and responsive. In a high fantasy sandbox campaign, players might start as adventurers in a vast, dangerous land with no clear objectives. They can explore ancient ruins, ally with powerful factions, or try to establish their own kingdom. The GM focuses on building a living world where events unfold without the player's direct involvement. Wars may break out, new threats may arise, and NPCs may pursue their own goals. The player's actions, or inaction, help shape the unfolding narrative. The web of Intrigue is a complex narrative structure where the story is centered around interlocking relationships, secrets, and power struggles. The players are placed in the middle of this web, and their actions or alliances with various NPCs and factions will shift the balance of power and reveal hidden truths. Every choice they make can cause ripple effects that change the dynamics of the web, revealing new layers of intrigue as they progress. This structure works well for campaigns focused on political intrigue, espionage, or mystery, where the goal is to uncover secrets and navigate shifting alliances. The web of intrigue can make even small decisions feel significant, as they may alter the course of events in unexpected ways. In a campaign set in a royal court, players may be spies, diplomats, or nobles working to manipulate the political landscape. The web of intrigue consists of various factions within the court, each with its own agendas, secrets, and power players. The players' alliances, betrayals, and investigations will alter the balance of power, leading to a constantly shifting narrative where trust is scarce and every decision can have far-reaching consequences. In the Reactive World model, the world is designed to change in response to the player's choices, but not necessarily in ways that they expect or desire. The story is shaped by the consequences of their actions, with the GM actively evolving the world based on player decisions. The Reactive World is particularly effective for campaigns where the theme revolves around unintended consequences or where the stakes are high, and every action has far-reaching effects. This technique is often used to create campaigns with a sense of moral complexity or realism, where players must grapple with the fact that even well-intentioned actions can lead to unforeseen and sometimes negative outcomes. In a dark fantasy campaign, the players might save a village from a marauding monster, only to discover that the monster was keeping a much greater evil in check. As the campaign progresses, the world becomes more dangerous because of the players' early heroics, forcing them to confront the unintended consequences of their actions. The GM continually updates the world based on what the players do, ensuring that the narrative evolves in response to their choices. The looping narrative is a structure where the players revisit the same or similar events multiple times, but with different contexts or perspectives each time. This can be achieved through time loops, parallel dimensions, or recurring dreams. The players' choices during each loop have a cumulative effect on the story, leading to new outcomes or revelations each time the loop occurs. This approach is excellent for creating a sense of mystery as the players gradually piece together the true nature of the loop and how to break it. This technique requires careful planning by the GM, as each iteration of the loop must reveal new information or consequences based on the player's prior choices. The key is to make each loop feel fresh, even as the players revisit familiar events. In a science fantasy campaign, the players are trapped in a time loop, reliving the same catastrophic event over and over. Each time they restart the loop, they retain the knowledge of their past attempts, allowing them to make different choices to try to change the outcome. As they explore the loop, they uncover hidden layers of the story, discovering secret agendas, hidden locations, and the true cause of the catastrophe. Eventually, their accumulated choices determine whether they can break the loop or are doomed to repeat it forever. Here's some techniques for implementing various branching narratives. One of the most valuable techniques a GM working with branching narratives is the illusion of choice. This technique involves presenting players with decisions that feel meaningful but do not require the GM to create entirely divergent storylines. In a D&D campaign, the party is tasked with retrieving a powerful artifact. They're given the choice of infiltrating the fortress via the front gates, which are heavily guarded, or seeking out an ancient secret passage. Both approaches lead them to the same central chamber, but the experiences of getting there differ, giving the players a sense of ownership over the story. Another key to effective branching narratives is making sure that the consequences of player choices are not immediate or predictable. A choice made early in the game might only have tangible effects much later, which keeps players on their toes and allows for long-term planning and storytelling. In a role-playing game set in the city on the brink of revolution, the players might choose to help a certain faction. Initially, this alliance brings them favor and resources, but many sessions later, the same faction's radical policies lead to unrest, forcing the players to decide whether they still support the cause or work to depose their former allies. To keep the narrative from spiraling out of control, it's essential to consider when branches should reconverge. This technique ensures that while player choices feel significant, the campaign doesn't become unwieldy for the GM. Carefully placed convergence points allow the GM to bring the story back together after major branching moments, maintaining coherence without negating the impact of earlier decisions. For example, after choosing between siding with a dragon or a group of freedom fighters, the players may follow vastly different paths for several sessions. However, both paths could eventually lead to the same climactic battle where the dragon and freedom fighters face off, with the players' alliances shaping the details of the confrontation. For branching narratives to work effectively, the players must feel invested in their choices. This often requires a level of collaboration between the GM and the players in shaping the world and its inhabitants. By giving players the opportunity to define elements of the world, such as key NPCs, political factions, or even entire regions, GMs can foster a sense of ownership that deepens the impact of branching narratives. The story becomes a shared creation, with the consequences of player decisions woven directly into the fabric of the game world. A player might create a character who's a former noble, estranged from their powerful family. The GM can use this backstory to build a political subplot, where the player must decide whether to reconcile with their family for the sake of power or remain independent at great personal cost. This choice can lead to a branching narrative that reflects the player's character arc as well as the broader plot. Despite their strengths, branching narratives can be challenging to manage. One common pitfall is the risk of over-preparation. GMs may feel pressured to create fully fleshed out versions of every possible narrative branch, leading to burnout. The key is to recognize that not every choice needs to result in an entirely separate storyline. Using techniques like the illusion of choice and convergence can help alleviate this burden. Another potential issue is player frustration if they feel that their choices don't matter or if too many branches lead to the same outcome. To avoid this, GM should ensure that at least some choices have lasting consequences, whether mechanical, like a change in a faction's favor, or narrative, like the survival or death of key NPCs. Ultimately, the goal of a branching narrative in a tabletop role-playing game is to create a story that feels personal and dynamic. Players should feel that their choices shape the world, even if the overall arc remains consistent. The most effective choices are those that reflect the themes of the campaign and challenge players to consider their characters' values, motivations, and relationships. In RPGs, there is a delicate balance between guiding the story and allowing players to freely shape their experience. Two concepts frequently discussed in this context are the illusion of choice and railroading. While these techniques both involve directing the narrative, they are fundamentally different in their approach, impact on player agency, and potential for controversy. Illusion of choice, as I've mentioned before, refers to a technique where players are presented with meaningful seeming options, but these choices ultimately lead to the same or similar outcomes. The illusion is that players feel empowered to make decisions even though the overall arc of the story remains consistent. The GM subtly directs the game without taking away the player's sense of agency. So, for example, players may be asked to choose between visiting a distant town or exploring a dangerous ruin, but regardless of their choice, they encounter the same key NPC who advances the plot. While the player's path may differ, the plot beats remain intact and the story progresses as the GM intended. The key to the illusion of choice is that even if the outcome is predetermined, the experiences along the way are varied enough to make the choices feel significant. Railroading, on the other hand, refers to a more heavy-handed approach, where the GM overtly forces the players into specific actions or outcomes, often regardless of their input or decisions. In a railroaded game, the player's choices have little to no impact on the story, as the GM has already determined the direction and outcome of events. This can lead to frustration because it strips players of their agency, reducing them to passive participants in a story that feels rigid and predetermined. As an example, a group of players may decide to avoid a dangerous encounter with a dragon by negotiating with a local faction instead. But if the GM insists that the dragon encounter happens regardless, whether by changing circumstances or forcing the party into a confrontation, this would be seen as railroading. The players' decisions are ignored and their desired path is obstructed by the GM's desire to keep the narrative on a specific track. The primary difference between illusion of choice and railroading is subtlety and respect for player agency. In the illusion of choice, the GM gently guides the story while allowing players to experience real consequences along different narrative paths, even if the destination is the same. The players feel in control of their decisions and are often unaware that the GM has crafted the illusion. This approach keeps the game flowing and the story manageable while maintaining player engagement. Railroading, by contrast, breaks the immersion because it directly undermines player choice. When players realize that their decisions don't matter, the sense of collaboration between the GM and the players erodes. Instead of feeling like co-creators of the narrative, players may feel like they are being pushed through a predetermined plot, which can lead to disillusionment and disengagement. Both illusion of choice and railroading are controversial in the tabletop RPG community, particularly when it comes to player expectations and the philosophy of game design. Players often come to the table expecting a high level of agency, where their actions directly shape the world and the story. When the illusion of choice is used skillfully, it can enhance player engagement by offering them a sense of control within a structured narrative. However, if the illusion becomes too obvious, players may feel manipulated, which can break immersion and lead to dissatisfaction. Railroading, on the other hand, is almost universally criticized because it can feel like a breach of trust between the GM and the players. Players expect their choices to matter. When they realize that their decisions have no impact, it can make the game feel like a one-person story rather than a collaborative experience. This sense of disempowerment can diminish the fun of the game and alienate players who want more freedom in their role-playing experience. There are some GMs and players who argue that there are situations where light railroading or a strong narrative framework is necessary to keep the game on track. In certain campaign settings, particularly those with a strong central plot, like a mystery or epic quest, too much freedom can dilute the tension or unravel the story's focus. In these cases, GMs might feel justified in using a more directive approach, especially if it serves the overall enjoyment of the group. The key to using either technique effectively or any of these techniques is communication and collaboration. Some players are happy to be gently guided through a narrative, enjoying the spectacle of a well-crafted story, while others prefer maximum freedom, relishing the opportunity to test the limits of the world the GM has created. Understanding what your players want and adjusting your storytelling techniques accordingly is crucial for maintaining trust and engagement. Ultimately, both illusion of choice and railroading exist on a spectrum. The most effective games tend to find a balance, giving players enough meaningful choices to feel empowered while still keeping the story coherent and moving forward. Skilled GMs can master the art of weaving branching narratives that give players real impact without letting the narrative spin out of control, offering just enough structure to keep things focused without ever making the players feel like their choices don't matter. So, whether using the hub and spoke model of branching tree or experimenting with more advanced techniques like modular narratives or the looping story, there's no shortage of ways to give your players meaningful choices that shape their journey. Remember, each approach offers a different balance of player freedom and narrative structure, and finding the right fit for your group is key to creating an unforgettable campaign. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more in-depth RPG tips and strategies, and let me know in the comments which narrative structures you have used and that you enjoy in your own campaigns. Thanks for watching. See you next time.